Hey there. Welcome to our live inside the Radiantly Alive Woman. We are here inside our women's only Facebook community. I am here in sunny Connecticut, and I am going to share as much information as I can handle, as you can handle, about appendix scars. So as you make your way into this Facebook Live, can you just let me know that you're here? Send me a hello, a hashtag live, anything just so I know that my sound is good, you can hear me well, and then we can get started into the appendix scar. So appendix scars are incredibly common, and they're not just for women. Men and women equally have these scars. So this is actually relevant for men and women, and I have, over my years, I have been looking at a lot of appendix scars. So I have a lot of really cool stuff to share. Hey Donna, great. I'm glad that you can hear me. Let me just get my thing in front of me. Sometimes I can't see comments on my phone. I have no idea why. Sometimes I can, sometimes I can't. So far I can see Donna, which is perfect. All right, got the goods open. Okay, so appendix scar. Appendix scars have changed over the years. Sometimes they are very large, and now they are more small. They are more like incision, like ports of like an inch or so. You may have 2 or 3, or you may have an older scar, which is a large scar spanning, several inches across the abdomen. So this is an abdominal scar. It's really common, more common to have it when you're young. Your appendix, something goes wrong, some sort of appendicitis, and then it's more of an emergency surgery. There's so many instances where you hear people getting their appendix removed in the nick of time before, it exploded. And then when sepsis is in the mix, it's a really dangerous situation. So appendix scars are really interesting for that, as well as specifically for women or men, but since we're in a group with women, women who have appendix scars who are in their 40s, 50s, 60s, 70s, or older. And I'll share that with you specifically in the energetic and emotional considerations of this video. So if you've been watching these videos often, you'll know that these videos are always broken out into 3 sections. There's always the physical. The physical considerations are super important to me that we understand really well. It's also my kind of foundational background. I have a very strong background in neurology and biomechanics, in anatomy and physiology. I was like the super geeky one. I was like the physiology anatomy assistant tech in university. So this is where I have spent a lot of time. And it's also a very grounded place to learn from. Why is that? Because the physical is, literally right in front of us. We can look at it and see it. It's a very tangible place to start the conversation around something that is really all-encompassing. It's not just physical. There's not just the physical impact that scars bring on. There's also this often not spoken about. A lot of people say that since they were in this group, they hadn't even considered this as an element to think about. But scars greatly impact our energy as well as our emotion. And so we're going to talk about things that are relating to all scars. I break down this phase into 3 different sections to consider, but specifically with appendix scar, like I said, I've learned something really specific, and it's kind of a shoe-in across the board that people who have this scar, who are above the age of 40, will be feeling this to some extent, usually to quite a large extent. My cat is going to try to distract me because he really wants to go outside. But here I am, appendix scar. And then the third part that we always do in these videos is the what to do. The what to do is also really important for me because we're right now in an era of just information overload, and we're gathering all this stuff, creating a lot of mental activity, a lot of brain function, which is very good. But we also want to know what to do. We want actionable steps. One of the things that I've noticed across the board, again, with the women I work with, we're very intelligent, we're very curious, we're very brainy, we've gotten very far in life by using our mind and our mental function. But if we are not connected to our body, one of the main reasons for that disconnect, having scars on our body, if we are disconnected from our body, we start to polarize ourselves into this very heady experience in like lens of life, and then very disconnected from our body. And as a woman, that is not what we want. We want to have an equal balance, because when we are connected to our body and like living from that place, that's what sets our life on fire. That's what gives us vitality and energy and all of the positive benefits. And oftentimes, women right now, we're really struggling with our health. We're struggling with our health physically, energetically, and emotionally. Specifically with appendix scars, like what is the stuff you could be feeling physically? Well, let me share. Some of the stuff you could be experiencing is digestion stuff across the board, food intolerances, any kind of indigestion, acid reflux, slow, sluggish digestion, or the opposite, like really quick, unprocessed diarrhea like digestion, anything across the board, food intolerances, they're all fair game for an appendix surgery scar. Other things that you could be feeling physically is a capacity to, or a challenge capacity to tone down or calm down your stress. Because the appendix scar is likely more in like a higher area of the abdomen, or like more in like the middle, then it's also going to be related to your breathing, related to your diaphragm in particular. People who have older scars that are larger, this absolutely correlates 100%. But people who maybe, there's all these different ways that you can be getting the scar, the incision points now. So it may not be so impactful on your breathing, but it will be in some way, because your breathing kind of apparatus is not just your diaphragm. We're talking about rib expansion. And what does that mean, like physically? It could be your ability to tolerate stress, or your ability to tone down stress, like a challenge capacity to do that. Yeah, so Donna here is saying she's always had digestion issues and have had a ton of food allergies. This is really common. People who have a lot of symptoms, like a lot of stress on their body from scarring, potentially you have a lot of scars, or maybe just one that's really old. Like I said, appendix is usually when you're like in your little years, or like early teens. Maybe you had it when you're older, but the most of us are like in this like 16 years or under kind of age group. That means you've had a scar weighing down on your physical as well as your energy and your emotion for many, many decades. When you have a lot of things weighing heavy on your system, all of these different things, life as well, like just life situations, stressful university experiences, work, finances, relationship dynamics, all this stuff going on, it really is challenging for our body to work efficiently. It's like bogged down. And that over time can create all these different things that come up. One of the most common ones that I hear are food intolerances, our inability to digest our food. So yeah, most appendix scars, like Donna's saying, it's your first scar. It's the oldest scar. When I'm working with people, I always look at their timeline, their personal timeline, and whatever's going on early on, I'm always red flagging that. I'm thinking like, what's the first scar that's potentially weighing the most on the person? So these are some of the things physically, as well as people will have a challenge of feeling stable or connected to their center. So this could feel like tweaky, kind of niggly back, leaning over and bending down to grab something, and it was just a simple bend down and grab the purse or tie up your shoe or whatever it was, and your back goes out, or your back goes into spasm, or something happens like that, like a small little everyday kind of mundane movement is a really can be really a potentially sensitive movement, or something that you avoid or kind of manage or change your life around. It's really common that any abdominal scarring will greatly challenge the body's ability to be integrated, like centered. You move off of your torso, you move off of your spinal column, and so when that is impeded in some way, it is a big problem. We're going to talk about pressure problems here. Anytime you have a scar on your abdomen, you have a pressure problem. Anytime you have a pressure problem, you're going to be feeling some of the things that I just spoke about. You'll also be feeling other things like pressure problems anywhere else, not necessarily in the like local to the abdomen. You could be having sinus stuff, eye pressure, under eye circles, ear stuff. congestion and all this in the sinus cavity, jaw clenching, grinding, all these sorts of things. So these are some of the common physical things with appendix. So we have like chronic pain in there, joint discomfort. We have digestion stuff, including bloating. We have breathing mechanic dysfunction as kind of the main umbrella with appendix. There's a lot more, but those are the kind of main ones. Then there's really a lot of emotion and energy stuff, which we'll come to. But let's just stay in this like physical world for a moment and let's just talk about pressure problems. So yeah, Don, I love when people come in here like, yeah, no, I feel that too. So Don is saying, yeah, sinus issues, headaches, super common, like pressure things. This is the deal with pressure problems. So let's get into this. I want you to imagine the abdomen from your diaphragm to your pelvic floor. Sorry, I'm like sitting on something. You can't see my pelvic floor. And then the front of your abdomen, the sides, as well as your back, your low back. I want you to imagine that as like a party balloon. It's not exactly how the body functions with like breathing mechanics, but I want you to just at least get the visual that this is an integrated like center. You need a very specific amount of pressure within this balloon to have proper digestion because inside of this party balloon is your whole digestive system, as a woman, your reproductive system, and your urinary system. So there's a lot of hormonal activity, there's a lot of stuff going on here. And breathing is one of the things that allows for nice, proper movement of all of these organs, as well as the pressure. If there's a pressure issue, which comes all the time whenever you have a scar, then it will inhibit all of these different body systems, which will also create a chain reaction into stuff like your nervous system, your hormone system, your immune system, and so on and so forth. So with this party balloon visual that we got going on here, I want you to imagine that, so we just visualize the party balloon blown up. I want you to deflate the party balloon for a moment, and then you're gonna like just push on an area. Like imagine it's the area where if you were to blow it up, it'd be where the appendix scar was. So you're gonna like kind of like spread it out and make it a bit thinner, like a bit challenged, like stretch it out. And then you're gonna re-blow that party balloon up. And instead of being a perfect kind of circle, balloon-like shape, 3D balloon, it's gonna have a little indent, like that place where you like extra pressed will have a little punch out. And that is in a like a simple way, a way that I want you to visualize the pressure problem. So no longer is the pressure distributed equally. There's a weakness somewhere. So why is the scar tissue creating weakness? Because scar tissue in general, which we change through the method that I have, scar tissue is very challenged to be adaptable. Actually, the scar tissue's like main function is to like bury in deep, anchor onto bone, which is very stable and hard to find in your abdomen. So it's going to start anchoring onto like your rib cage. It's going to start anchoring onto your pelvic bones to find that stability. And that makes it very, in one instance, perfect because the wound doesn't get reopened, which is exactly what the body wants. It does not want to be open to the external world because when it's open like that, there's the potential for infection. And that's an all hands on deck situation. That's a no-go kind of dangerous situation. So the body closes that up, anchors it down, really make sure that it's solid, but it doesn't have a lot of give. It doesn't have this resilience, adaptability kind of modification capacity that a lot of the other organs, a lot of the other connective tissues have. They're made to move. Scar tissue at first is not made to move. And what we do through my system, Scars Reigniting Your Feminine, is we help give that scar tissue some life again. If you were to open the definition of what scar tissue is in like a medical textbook, it's going to say it's inert tissue, aka not living tissue. It doesn't receive the same type of circulation of like hydration, of nourishment. That's all not happening there. And we bring that life back in through a variety of different methods, not just the manual work, also breathing, also different types of movement, including flushing, which I have just kind of created because of working with scars so often. So we want to keep all of this into consideration as a pressure problem. When there's a pressure problem here, there's also a pressure problem anywhere else in the torso. And like I said, if pressure problems can feel like vulnerability in the back, because each joint, each disc as well for the vertebrae has a certain like sweet spot of required pressure. Same with the head, same with the face, same with the sinuses, same with the eyes. Everything is requiring this pressure, and if we don't have it, then we're at a loss. And your body is trying to like make up for it in different ways, which it does really, really well because the body is amazing and the body will compensate. It's just at what cost, and what cost over time. This is another thing I try to train into our brains. Compensation is actually a good thing. If we didn't have compensation, we'd all be kind of screwed because we'd be hanging around in bed unable to move. What we do, what we ask of our body does it, but at what cost? So we want to always find the culprit of like what's happening, why this is happening. And scars are usually top of my list, like I was just saying, especially appendix scars because they're always old and they hold so much physical challenge in the body and tons of energy, tons of impact into our mood, our emotion, and our energy. So I'm just going to look down at my notes. I've touched on digestion. I've touched on breathing. Breathing is obviously incredibly related to pressure. How we actually inhale, exhale is a pressure gradient through our lungs. But every single time we take a breath, we should be breathing down into our organs. Our diaphragm is a dome that on an inhale descends, pushes pressure into our organs, to which our organs accommodate and move out and usually down, out and down. If that's not happening, we don't have this, what I like to call massage like undulation going on in our organs. Every organ should be moving a little bit and it should be happening with our breathing. Wherever there's a scar on your body, I will put money on it that you're not breathing into it. You're breathing probably everywhere else around except for actually into the scar. Because putting input and like stretch into the scar will challenge that area, potentially start unearthing like jammed, packed in emotion and like energy, like the experience is usually stuck and jammed in the scar, and like pushing on it will start to bring it out, which as a human being is totally freaky because we are just hardwired for comfort and safety, walk away, run away from pain or anything that hurts. So I will just check this out in your own body. Where we have many scars, say you're a woman with a breast reduction. So you have scarring on your chest. You have an appendix scar on one side, and then you also have a C-section or maybe a hysterectomy scar. You will have many spots on your body where you can't really breathe into because you have to push into that scar tissue, actually ask it to do something, which we don't do. And so you'll be more likely to breathe like up in the chest. Up in the chest breathing has been linked to cardiovascular disease, heart health problems, circulation problems. It also is really not good for anxiety, depression, stress, all of that stuff. So wherever there's a scar in the abdomen, chest, torso area, we want to breathe into it. It's so important and we need to do it mindfully because like I said, scars to me are transformation hotspots. Usually we don't know how impactful scars are. And so they're like untouched wells of like resource and like transformation potential, which is really exciting for me and should be exciting for you. Maybe you've massaged them a little bit because you're clued into the fact that it's not moving well, or maybe you were advised, but there's more to do. There's a huge kind of umbrella of stuff that we want to do. And so, with all that physical, let's talk about the energy and the emotion. I'll tell you a story. This is probably one of my favorite stories to say or to share about scar work. I did this when I was just kind of learning about the impact of scars in this emotion energetic sense, and it really kind of caught me off guard and like really kind of stopped me dead in my tracks. And then over time, over years, I started noticing that this is a trend. So this is a trend with women or men who have scars, appendix scars from when they were little. And now, present day, they're in their 40s, 50s, and 60s. And the key thing in this story is if you were of age to go to the hospital for however many days that you were there, but you were left alone because your parents couldn't stay in the hospital with you. Because back in the day, you weren't allowed to do that. You were, as a child, left inside the hospital with nobody. And that was very scary as a little kid, whether you were small, 15, 16, 20, it's still scary to do that. And all of these people will have an issue with abandonment. So the way that this story goes is I was working, must have been it must have been about 2014, and I was working with a woman. I was working on her appendix scar, and it was really gnarly. Like it was really quite a deep scar. And she was talking about it, and we were just, sharing, and I was getting in there with my hands. She was telling the story about how she was left alone, and it really made her afraid, and she was really, scared, and all of this stuff. And there's this moment, and I'm not even sure how it happened, but there was this moment when I was pushing, her mind was coming, the emotion was kind of coming out of the scar, and she just went into absolute hysterics. So she just screamed, which was very shocking, screamed and yelled and just started bawling, like an incredible amount of bawling that was coming out of the scar. So the actual physical movement of the scar woke her up to this memory that then started getting moved. The emotion, the energy was all stuck up in the scar that started to come out because of all of that stimulus. This is how we work the energy and the emotion. This is one of the ways that we do that is actually through manual work. Anytime you put stress and tension or movement, particular focus, attention into a scar, whether you're doing it with breathing or movement or manual work or different types of other things that are in my system, you're bringing that out. So abandonment as a theme is huge. It's really big. So with this energy and the emotion consideration, oftentimes these are a lot more abstract and subtle. And so when I'm saying these to you, maybe quickly you're like, oh, that doesn't resonate, or I don't have that. What I want you to do with these considerations is to really sit with them, or go for a walk with them, or journal, or whatever method, breathing practice, meditation, whatever feels good to you. Just check in and see if that's there. See if it's kind of as a like a pattern in your life. If the fear of abandonment is present, that's a really big one to pay attention to. And it may not be in a huge way, but it may be present. And when these things are there, holding us back from really expressing and showing up as the women that we want to be in our life, we want to make sure that we have a method to fully resolve that, to know that that abandonment is just caught up in a story, like a time frame, a period that can be resolved and transformed into something that's much more powerful and revitalizing. And we can actually use that like compacted, stored energy, like tension, to be liberated and transformed into something useful, because all of that is like held under tension for decades and decades and decades often, especially with an appendix. So I want you to think about that, as well as the center, like of where it is. So the abdomen, particularly in this kind of mid-abdomen area, is always related to the element of fire in Ayurveda or yoga. So just for simplicity's sake, the element of fire, I want you to imagine it like an actual flame. And I also want you to imagine it as a method of transformation, meaning like if I chuck a stick in the fire, it is no longer a stick after a period of time. It has transformed from this state to that state. So if we have a scar in our abdomen, it challenges our ability to transform. Not just transform on a large scale, but I mean like take stuff that's happened to us and use it and transform it into something that's workable and helps us be better human beings. Meaning we may get stuck on stuff. We may ruminate and get harp on something for an extended period of time because we have a lack of transforming capacity. Our fire is a little dull. Maybe it's like kindling. It's not a raging kind of thing that helps with circulation and with movement, because we have all this like scarring, like quite literally like in the area that impedes that. So that's something else that I see really, really commonly. So think of fire, not just as a campfire. It is helpful to see, but in Ayurveda and yoga, I really want you to like view it as a place where you can start building energy, harvesting energy, fueling your life, like fueling your vitality as a woman. And if that's dulled and like blanketed for scarring reasons. We want to liberate that. We want to get that fire pumping so that you can be a more vibrant woman. And so think about that in your life. Think about that as it relates to digestion, like we spoke about with food, but digestion of life experiences, like resting on stuff and like really holding things in, the limiting beliefs that we tell ourselves over and over and over. This is a fire issue. This is a digestion issue. And then the last thing I want to talk about as far as the emotion and the energy, apart from the obvious stress. Stress is like physical, it also can be spoken about in energy wise. We have a really poor ability to regulate our stress. That's just an obvious one because of the scarring and the breathing and our capacity to transform like that fight or flight mood into something rest and digest and parasympathetic and restorative. We have a challenge to like live in that parasympathetic state a little bit longer. In a day-to-day, we should be like in a stressful state, as well as in a parasympathetic state, as well as in a stressful state. And we should be doing this up and down all the time. But our ability to actually regulate as like back to baseline is poor. It's just not so good. It takes us a long time. Like I said, we get stuck in our mind. It gets really encased in challenge, and maybe we run into old thoughts and patterns around abandonment or something else. But the side body is the other thing, the other consideration I want you to think about. So the appendix is like an organ that you can relate to the kind of function of the gallbladder and the liver. They're kind of like all in there together. And particularly the gallbladder in Chinese medicine, as well as in Ayurveda, they are related to the channel of the body that's on the side of the body. So if you were to Google, I highly suggest you do this Google, look up Chinese acupuncture meridians and look up the gallbladder meridian. You'll see it spanning the whole side of the body, side of the head, side of the ribs, side of the hip, side of the leg, all the way down into the side of the foot. And why am I telling you that? Because that's an area where we could be potentially holding a lot of tension. And it's also highly linked up and related to these hot emotions. Again, going back to fire, going back to transformation, like anger, rage, resentment, frustration, irritation. Those are like really common for appendix surgery people that those things are present. Like we're like right there. They're superficial. That's our like go-to move is more towards that tendency. And maybe we try to blanket it because we feel like it's wrong or not right or whatever our kind of limiting belief pattern that's going on underneath that. But we have a tendency to shoot into those kind of emotions. And you'll feel that kind of tension into the sides of your body. So think about your sides of your hips, sides of your knees, feet, ankle sprains, rolling over on the ankle, armpits, and like side of the neck and into the side of the head. We were talking about headaches earlier, right here, right there. So that's the energetic and emotional piece. That's all I want to, or all I should share. I've been trying to make these videos shorter so people can actually watch them, but I just get very excited and want to just give it all. So I'll leave it there. If you have any questions about any of those points and topics that we touched on, please feel free to write something in if you're live or if you're watching this on replay. No worries. I'm very active here in the group. Just type it out and I will just get to that as soon as possible. Yes. Yeah, totally. So Donna's saying all of those body parts on the side are impacted. Very common. And because appendix scars are usually very old, it's because these things have been stacking up over time. So if you've had a C-section, for example, you had a C-section and it was like 2 months ago, it probably isn't weighing so heavily on stuff yet. It's of course challenging your core and like your internal pressure, and it's like challenging your bladder and bowel function and all of these things that it naturally would. But then when things are building up over time and we don't address them, it becomes this kind of spiral effect. And appendix scars, they're old, and so they build up all this stuff over time. Like we said, food intolerances and all the kind of chronic pain, tension spots that I was just talking about. All right, so what do we do? What do we do with all this information? So I'm going to share the thing that I share with every single scar because you can't skip over this spot, because when I first started working on scars, and that woman went into hysterics, I don't want you to do that. I don't want that to happen to you. I want you to note and remember that scars are important and scars matter. And you may not be like clued into that. You may understand it, like hear me saying it, but you don't actually feel it as a thing until you do this practice. So this is why I give this out now across the board. You do it for every scar. I suggest doing like one scar a day. Don't like have a field day on a Sunday afternoon and do them all. They each need their own time and dedication and awareness and presence. The most important thing that you do with this practice is to honor your timeline, like just respect who you are and be really gentle and soft with yourself, knowing that everything is workable, really, truly. In my world, everything is workable. And so we want to have that approach. I know a lot of stuff that I'm saying, you're kind of like, whoa, this is scary, this is freaky, like this feels overwhelming. Scar work is probably the least overwhelming thing when you do it properly with someone who is trained, like myself, and you walk into these kind of deep things really slowly. So the first step is this 3-part guided practice. And the first part is the relaxing into, which is just as simple as finding somewhere comfortable in your home, bedroom, living room, wherever room, being there either seated or laying, having hand to skin contact on the actual scar itself. And this part's really important. I want you to actually like meaningfully connect with your body through the sense of touch. Sense of touch with the whole hand, not like a pokey, proddy, analyzing kind of, invasive way. I want you to make a whole hand and like connect with the scar wherever it is. Maybe you need 2 hands, depending on like where the port or like where the holes are. And I want you to recognize that you are touching your scar. Just that alone can bring up stuff. Maybe not, maybe yes. It doesn't matter. I just want to make sure that you feel like you're actually doing an important step here. It's not like you're just putting on makeup, or it's not like you're putting on clothes and like, slapping lotion on and just touching your body. No, I want you to actually like say to yourself or acknowledge like, I'm touching my scar right now, I'm touching my body. And then the final part to that is to close your eyes, just so that you tone down one sense, the sense of sight. It helps you to go a little bit more internal, and it revs up other senses, like gets you more into the feeling touch sense. It also helps you to just focus and be a bit more present. Then the second part, phase 2, I want you to grab as much physical information as you can. Gather as much physical info around places in the scar that feels numb, dark, I don't feel anything, numbness. On the other end, hypersensitivity, nausea. Sometimes people feel like they want to throw up, feel sick, feel like they got a headache, feel like severe aversion. Immediately, stuff will start coming up from just touching the scar. Sometimes. Don't try to expect things, just let it happen. Things around, like I said, hypersensitivity, but also temperature, cold, hot. And then obviously all the stuff around like tension, places where the scar is raised or like puckered or coming up and out of the skin, areas where it's doing the opposite, like buried in deep. You want to feel for those anchor points. Where are those? Someone came on here in my last video and said, Kendra, I started just like feeling how it's all anchored in and connected to my bone. I never felt that before. Feeling it in your body, once you feel it, you never unfeel it. It helps you to feel more connected and builds a relationship with the area, which is exactly what we want to do. All of that, gather as much as you can physically. And then the third and final part is to gather these 3 phases around the scar: energy and emotion. So I didn't talk about them in this video, so let's just talk about them now. When we just think of energy and emotion, you're like, Kendra, I don't even know how to start. You go into these 3 sections because there'll be 3 very different feelings, vibes, energies from these 3 different phases. The first phase is everything that happened before the surgery. I spoke at the beginning how it could be emergency. There's a lot of stuff that happens right before the surgery, a lot of fear, a lot of potential pain. Usually an appendix is like a coming in hot kind of thing. It's not like a fusion. We're doing neck fusions, talking about like chronic years and years of like poor movement mechanics, An appendix is not that. It's a coming in hot kind of thing. So gather as much as you can. You are usually very little. So don't discredit the like childlike feelings or like imagery or like back in the day things that you had, like remembering like my mom didn't do this or my dad did this or whatever. They all count. Even if you were little, they're still important and valid, and we want to make sure that we respect that. So the feeling, vibe, energy, emotion before the surgery. Phase two, surgery itself. So all the time, you got to put fear in that box because fear, surgery is scary. And if you were little when it happened, even more. If you're left alone in the hospital, ramp that fear button like gauge way up. So gather as much as you can. Other things I like to talk about is relationship dynamics between you and maybe in this situation, your parents, other family members, if it's older, your spouse or whoever's in the mix, as well as medical staff, people in the hospital. How did they treat you? How did you feel? Even if medical staff had the utmost want and desire to take good care of you and feel that they had your needs in their best interest, maybe it didn't come across like that because you were really freaked out, and that's okay. Your experience is your experience. Whatever it felt like, you got to know, you got to be real and make note of it. Then the after. This is a long one if it's been since you were a kid. So anything from the healing, maybe there was an infection, maybe it didn't heal well. As a kid, you don't really listen. You start moving and stretching and stitches start popping. Whatever happened there, all the way up to present day. So depending on what the scar looks like, we could be talking about body image stuff. Depending on things that happened around that time, like relationship dynamics. I've heard of people like spouses getting in huge or parents getting in huge arguments, and that really impacted the kid, the person who had the appendix surgery. It really impacted their view and their lens of like their parent dynamic and relationship. So there's so much stuff that you need to unpack in your own situation because you're unique, and all of that is totally unique to you. So the energy, vibe, feeling, emotion around everything after from the healing of the scar to present day. Definitely check in on the abandonment. It's, I guarantee it's there. It's every single person that I've worked with who have an appendix scar, it is there in some way. So all of those things, talking about irritation, frustration, all of that stuff, where is it? Do you feel like you resonate with all that stuff? Has it really been like contained since the appendix scar? Were you like a happy-go-lucky kid, and then you had that appendix scar or the appendix surgery? It totally freaked you out, changed how you viewed in the world, relationship dynamics between your parents went a little bit astray, and then this kind of created the container at which you experience life. These things happen, and when you have these insights, these aha, these connected dot moments, they're like very transformative and life-changing when you see this from this perspective. So that's the what to do for every single scar. Now, what do you do for the appendix scar itself? Well, we spoke about pressure problems, breathing dysfunction, holding a lot of tension, and having those like hot emotions being more present, like anger, hatred, frustration, irritation, resentment, as well as like a challenge to regulate our stress. So what's the best thing to do for all of those is to learn how to properly breathe. Not just properly breathe, but learn that breathing is a tool. Breathing is something that you should be using as a method to regulate your health. It's not just I'm doing some breathing practices, but I'm living inside my head and I'm listening to a guided audio and I'm doing the thing that the person's saying. I mean something like much larger, much more all-encompassing, something that's very powerful. And this is what I want to start giving you as like a little feeder. I can't give it to you all in this video as much as I really wish I could, but nobody would watch this stuff for hours and hours. So I want you to start learning about breathing as it relates to breathing low, particularly in your lower abdomen, and allowing the front of your abdomen to start expanding, meaning like start pushing into that scar tissue with your breath. Very, very transformative practice in itself, but also breathing into the sides of your body as well as the back of your body. Breathing as if you were filling up that balloon. You know, you fill up a balloon, blow it, it opens in all directions. We don't want to be just pushing our tummy forward. We also don't want to be breathing like just up in our chest, or even worse, like into our neck and having this like really tight tension neck, which a lot of people who have scars have. They have like really tight chest and necks. So I want you to imagine that your torso from your pelvic floor to like your rib cage here is like an empty glass or cup of water. And breathing, the breath that you're pulling into your body, I want you to visualize it as like a faucet and water going in the empty cup. So what does that mean? It means that the breathing, your breath is hitting the pelvic floor first. We're going beyond physiology here, and we're visualizing that your pelvic floor can expand and kind of stretch out and open and lengthen in all directions, accommodating for that water coming in the empty cup. So you're breathing low from the abdomen, sides, back, and then as the water fills, you're starting to fill up further, all the way up to the top of your ribs, letting breath fill you from the bottom up. And then because the breath is like filled up here on your exhale, this starts to lower, kind of like lower, meaning like come back to like rest instead of being expanded and open. Kind of lower and shorten and compress and come back to center from the chest first, because it's like the closest to your nose here. Just being obvious. I know this seems like Kendra, duh, but sometimes it's like, oh yeah, that makes sense. I didn't even think about it like that. So the breath is exiting from here first. The last place it is exiting is from low in the abdomen pelvic floor. So this is also called yogic breath, sometimes called four-part breath. Has a bunch of different names. There's a lot more detail into it, but as you start breathing in this way, it will regulate your stress, improve your digestion, help all those organs move, start to reestablish that proper pressure gradient. It will do a lot of really wonderful things, including putting pressure into that scar to help release some of that held, stuck, bound up emotion and energy in there. So if I just do this really quickly, I'm gonna put my hand, if I put my hand too low, you can't see it. So as low as you can, like above your pubic bone, inhale, cup of water through the nose. Open this whole area, not just the tummy moving forward, but in all directions. So I'm inhaling from low, filling, 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 filling. The chest is expanding and opening all the way to the top. And then I'm at the top of my inhale, and then the exhale from here first. Out the nose, from the chest. Exhales coming back to center, coming back towards like the core, the middle of the torso. Exit, breath is leaving, leaving, leaving. And all the way, last thing to do is the pelvic floor. That's where the breath's coming from. You're not contracting your pelvic floor, you're not contracting your abs, you're not contracting anything. You're allowing just this passive movement, this undulation to come back in that should be naturally present in your body. So that's what I want you to do with your breathing. Let me just check to see if there's any more questions or comments. But like I said, if you have any questions at any point, just please let me know. I'm very happy to answer at any point. Tomorrow we're doing a really exciting one. So we're going to do nose jobs. So sinus stuff, anything going on like septum stuff, anything like nose related. We're going to be talking about that tomorrow. We always do it at the same time. And I'm really excited for that one, and I will see you then. But otherwise, type in those questions. It's nice to see them. It's nice to have them. Women really benefit from your questions, and it's really great to know that you guys have questions and just you're thinking about these things and how it relates to your body, knowing that these videos are helping you in some small way. Yeah, septum stuff tomorrow, Simone. You are welcome. You're welcome, Donna. See you tomorrow. Enjoy the rest of your day, and we'll chat soon. Bye.